I brought my sister-in-law to live with us, and she ended up engaged to my uncle. Now my family is divided, and I am at the center of everything without having asked to be. There are things you do from a genuinely good place of wanting to help someone you love that in the moment make complete sense. That when you offer them, you cannot imagine they're going to produce a chain of events that 2 years later will have you in a position you did not choose and do not exactly know how to handle. I invited Daniela to live with us because it was the right thing. She was my husband's sister. She had just come out of a difficult marriage. She had 3 children. She was in a city where she had no real support network. And we had space and we had the willingness. What I did not have was a map of what was going to happen after. My name is Valeria. I am 41 years old. I am an interior designer, and I live in Guadalajara with my husband Tomas, who is 43 and who is a civil engineer. Daniela is Tomas's younger sister. She is 38 years old. When I invited her to move in with us, she had been 6 months out of her 10-year marriage with a man I am not going to describe in detail, because her story is hers, not mine. What I will say is that Daniela arrived at our house with 3 children aged 9, 7, and 5, and with the energy of someone who is rebuilding something from a very low point. The cohabitation had worked well during the first months. Daniela found work. The children adapted to the new city and the new school. The dynamic at home was what it can be when there are 5 adults plus 3 children in a space designed for 2. Tight, but manageable because there was goodwill on both sides. And then she met my Uncle Gerardo. My Uncle Gerardo is 54 years old. He is my mom's younger brother. He is a veterinarian with his own clinic. He has been divorced for 4 years from a 20-year marriage that ended in a way nobody in my family describes in much detail, but that was, according to what I understood over time, painful for both of them. He has 2 daughters, aged 23 and 20, with whom he has a close relationship, though not of daily cohabitation. I met him when I was 7 years old, and he has been part of my life since then. Daniela met him at a family gathering we organized 3 months after she came to live with us. I introduced them, without any agenda, without having thought for a single moment that that introduction was going to have consequences. I simply introduced them because they were in the same room, and it was what you did. What happened in the following months, I'm going to tell in the way I found out about it. Not all at once, in layers. First, I found out they had exchanged numbers that same day of the gathering. Then that they had gone out for coffee. Then that they had gone out several times. Then that they were dating formally. Each of those layers came to me with a different processing time. The first seemed nice. The second generated a curiosity I did not know quite how to name. The third started producing something more complicated than curiosity. The fourth made me have the first difficult conversation with my mom. My mom's name is Beatrice. She is 67 years old. She is the oldest of 4 siblings, which includes Gerardo. When I told her Daniela and Gerardo were dating, her reaction was not what I expected. It was not the reaction of someone who is happy their brother has found someone. It was the reaction of someone who already had a formed opinion and whose expression of that opinion had been waiting for the right moment. My mom told me Daniela seemed to her like a calculating woman, that she had arrived at our house with nothing and was finding ways to stay in our family in ways that went beyond the relationship with Tomas. That Gerardo was vulnerable after the divorce, and that it was not hard for someone with Daniela's social skills to find a way to win his trust. I asked her what she based that on. She told me on a way Daniela moved, that at gatherings she was always at the center, that she knew exactly what to say to each person. I told her that could also be described as Daniela being a socially skilled person. My mom said yes, exactly. What followed in subsequent months was a division in my family that had not existed before I invited Daniela to live with us. My mom and 2 of my aunts and uncles were against the relationship. My grandmother, Elena, who is 84 years old and who is still the most clear-minded person in the whole family, was in favor. My other aunt was in favor. Gerardo was obviously in favor, and I was in the middle, which was exactly the worst place to be. The event that made my position in the middle harder to sustain was my older son's birthday. My son Santiago turned 10 in October. Tomas and I had planned a celebration at home. Modest because October had come with a month of extra expenses we had not anticipated. Simple, but meaningful. Daniela, who at that point was more economically established and had started talking about looking for her own apartment, proposed we do it differently. That Santiago deserved a memorable party, that she would contribute a significant part of the cost, that she knew a place the children would love. Tomas got enthusiastic. I had a reservation that I could not name precisely in the moment, and that in retrospect was the first signal of something I'm still processing. The party was beautiful. Santiago remembers it as the best of his life. And the final cost was approximately double what Daniela had said she was going to contribute. The difference Tomas and I covered. And that difference had us tight for almost 2 months. When I told my mom about that, her reaction was predictable. She told me that was exactly the kind of thing she had been trying to tell me. That Daniela made decisions that had consequences for others without fully measuring that impact, or measuring it and not caring enough. I told her it had been a birthday party, that Daniela's intentions had been good, that what had happened was a miscommunication about costs and not a conspiracy. My mom looked at me in the way your mom looks at you when she thinks you are being naive and does not want to say it that way, because she knows if she does you will close off. She told me I was free to see things how I saw them, that she hoped she was wrong. What I feel now about all of this is more complicated than when I started telling it. Because if there were a simple answer, I would have found it in the year and a half I have been in this position. Why have her questions that coexist without resolving? Is Daniela the person my mom describes? I do not know. What I know is that Daniela is a person who arrived in my life at a moment of her own vulnerability and who has shown herself capable of building strong relationships very quickly. That could be a genuine and warm skill, or it can be a skill that has a strategic component I am not seeing, or it could be both things at the same time. Is Gerardo a person who is being manipulated? He does not appear to be. Gerardo is a 54-year-old man with enough life experience to recognize when someone is not good for him. When I have asked him directly how he is doing, he has told me it is the most honest relationship he has had. Is my mom someone who is seeing something real, or someone who has difficulty accepting that Gerardo found someone new? Possibly both. Am I someone who is defending Daniela because I genuinely believe in her, or because acknowledging that my mom could be right would also mean acknowledging that I introduced someone complicated into my family? That last question is the most uncomfortable, and I have no answer. Daniela and Gerardo got engaged 3 months ago. The wedding is planned for next year. My mom has not said she is not going, but she also has not said she is going with the disposition of someone who accepts the situation. Daniela no longer lives with us. She found her apartment 8 months ago, and the transition was good. The relationship with Tomas and me is still close. The children are fine. Gerardo is fine in the way that someone looks fine when they are in a relationship that is working for them. And I am still in the middle. Not because anyone put me there, but because the chain of events that started when I invited her to live with us placed in my life a division that I do not know how to resolve without deciding one side is right and the other is not. And I do not have that certainty. What I want you to take from this story is not a conclusion. It is a question I think it is important to ask yourself before doing what I did. When you invite someone into your most intimate world, your home, your family, your connections, you are creating the possibility of relationships you do not control or anticipate. Not because that is necessarily bad, but because it is real, and that reality has consequences we are not always prepared for. I do not regret having invited Daniela. I do not know yet, and that uncertainty is exactly what I wanted to tell you. Because stories that end with certainty are easier to tell, but the ones that end with uncertainty are more honest and closer to what life actually produces. If this story resonated with you, comment. Have you ever been in the middle of a family conflict that you started without meaning to while trying to do something good? Like if you believe parents' warnings about people who enter the family deserve to be heard, even if not necessarily obeyed. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who is navigating a complicated family dynamic where there are no clear answers. Reflection to take with you. Being in the middle of a family conflict does not always mean you failed at something. Sometimes it means you are the person who sees both sides clearly enough not to be able to choose one without betraying something of the other. That place is uncomfortable, It is also the place from which you can, if you decide to, be the bridge that keeps something together while the people at the extremes find a way to come closer.